Now, honestly, this video is kinda pointless as Outward is an incredibly well-balanced game and the weapon type you choose more or less comes down to personal preference. Miyazaki could never. Also, the individual options matter much more than the weapon type. If, let's say, I clear the Stone Titan caves with a Fang sword, I'd better be fucking switching to the Sunfall Axe regardless of whether it's theoretically belonging to a worse weapon type or not. Well, whatever. In this video, I will be ranking all main weapon types from worst to best, taking into consideration their respective pros, cons, and how valuable the niche they occupy is. Also, I will be looking at the weapon type exclusive skills, however I plan on doing a dedicated video on them and as such will only briefly mention whether they are strong or not. Starting off at the bottom, we've got the bows. Outward being an open world game, bows are of course highly valuable in the open world, allowing you to snipe away at enemies while proccing dots. However, in close quarters as well as in boss fights, they become borderline useless due to their poor DPS and skills, as while sniper shot is solid, all other bow skills are either inconsistent or outright bad. Still, especially on a first playthrough, they can be incredibly helpful. Moving on to axes, they are indecisive, like Donald Trump contemplating what vaguely Hispanic man to deport next and what bogus fabrication he should justify it with. Now, axes are capable of the highest DPS of any one-handed weapon and deal solid impact damage, but I feel like both maces and swords have it beat when it comes to actually being useful, as if I wanted a high DPS weapon, I'd just go for a two-handed one. And since axes consume heaps of stamina, have poor range and require lengthy combos to really get the most out of them, they don't really synergize quite that well with offhand options. To further detriment of this weapon class are its skills, as Talus Cleaver is fucking ass and Scalp Collector is also kinda ass. Axes in general are ass. Historically speaking, there has never been a weapon quite as efficient yet effective as the trusty spear. A long stick with a pointy end you stick him with has been the weapon of choice for much of our ancestry. Yet in a world with magic guns and tripwire traps, the previously savage skewers have lost some of their luster, not in small parts due to the radical invention of multiple enemies. As while spears provide high damage at long ranges, their lack of both area coverage and impact damage make them unsuited for dealing with more than a single opponent efficiently. Also, both Simian's Gambit and Vicious Cycle aren't incredibly strong, though the latter does help quite a bit with AoE damage. So if you're not overly concerned with getting ganked, spears pose quite a capable option, but should you encounter a plurality of enemies, you best have spells or an assortment of AoE skills at the ready. Well, this is gonna be a contentious one. Let me preface this by again saying that all weapon classes in this game are very viable and strong. Okay. Great axes provide the highest DPS of any weapon class, as their combos can swing incredibly quickly, also leading to very high impact damage. This comes at the cost of role-playing as an asthma patient also suffering from long-term COVID symptoms, as your stamina bar will be completely empty and the edges of your screen dimmed, also hinting at your inevitable collapse from either exhaustion or a surviving enemy mauling your stamina-less ass to death. As for the skills, execution is really quite good and Warrior's Vein is fine, I guess. All of this leaves me with the advice that if you so choose to play with great axes, you have to center your entire build around it and seek out every single stamina boosting skill in the game, otherwise your experience might be quite exhausting. While some games like Bloodborne for example are very clear in their real life influences, others like Outward are more ambiguous, but the Gauntlet weapon type does heavily invoke the mental image of a Brexit geezer rallying their brass knuckles upon finding out that an Irishman is within their general vicinity and attacking the guileless leprechaun after the England national team loses to fucking Iceland. Regardless, the gauntlets are actually very strong. They of course attack very quickly, and so both their DPS and overall impact damage are quite respectable. Also, their moveset is extremely good, offering a variety of ways to close down the distance to an enemy, an essential capability when you're, well, punching with regular sized fists. As for their skills, Prismatic Flurry is incredibly strong if a bit arduous to set up, and Vital Crash is both incredibly fun and reasonably strong. Also, the heavy attack combos are very reminiscent of the swords as they allow you to dodge with sufficient foresight. However, as obvious due to their placement, they do still harbor some downsides. For one, they are the only weapon class that doesn't get 100% physical blocking, which honestly isn't a huge deal to me, especially on a weapon type that demands high aggression, but some people might mind. And of course, as mentioned, their range is fucking shite, meaning that you have to be close enough to an enemy to have a developed opinion on the odor of their oral area. However, again, it's all a matter of skill issue or lack thereof. So overall, gauntlets are incredibly powerful on a dedicated build and if used by a dedicated mind, but for those seeking the easiest and most forgiving experience, fisting your enemies to death is not what I'd like to do. Maces are, well, just very solid. Good damage, okay speeds, solid moveset, and most importantly, the highest one-handed impact damage, surpassing even many two-handed weapon types. The only real negative I can think of is that their range is of course rubbish and that their skills, while synergizing really quite nicely, aren't particularly strong. Still, they make for a great pairing with shields. And we can continue with their biggest siblings, the Great Maces, which do the exact same thing as maces but just more. Even good damage, even okayer speeds, and even higher impact. Their skills are also outstanding. Juggernaut is just a big old bonk, and Crescendo provides a nice damage boost, though they, funnily enough, have quite the anti-synergy, with Crescendo requiring you to not get hit, while Juggernaut basically necessitates it. Still, besides their range, they really don't do anything too wrong. Then as for the final one-handed weapon type, swords. They deal the least damage and impact of the available options, but have some crucial traits that make them an ideal choice for many builds. As if you're using a one-handed weapon, chances are that you're also using an off-handed weapon like daggers, pistols, or chagrams, and for all of those, swords are just the best pairing. That mostly comes down to their longer reach and consistently advancing quick moveset, allowing for more reliable staggering with chagrams and finishing off enemies if paired with pistols. Daggers demand the opponent to be afflicted with pain and confusion, and the Maelstrom Blade paired with Puncture is the only reliable way to do that. And the technique is broken as well. As a main option, swords lag behind both axes and maces, but again, if you weren't planning on using off-handed weapons, then why bother with one-handed weapons in the first place? And along with those off-handed weapons, swords are simply superior in both moveset and range. Their lower damage and impact doesn't really matter when you've got another armament in charge of that. Okay, we've reached the top two, of which the polearms/halberds get the second place purely due to personal bias. Polearms generally have the second highest range out of all melee weapons, but unlike spears, they perform a variety of horizontal swings, which paired with impact only second to Great Maces means that halberds are absolute crowd control beasts, while also being capable of easily dispatching of greater foes due to how important high impact damage is. Also, typically polearms are the premier choice for casters, as most endgame mage options fall into this class. Even the skills are immaculate. We'll swipe doubles down into the crowd control, it's actually fucking ridiculous, and Splitter, while situational, can dish out some of the highest multipliers in the game. The only conceivable downside is that they deal the lowest two-handed damage when not counting gauntlets, but again, impact is vastly more important. You know, if an enemy is dealing with broken kneecaps, killing them is only a matter of time anyways, and so whether you're dealing 100 or 110 damage doesn't really matter. And finally, Great Swords, which again take the top spot not because they're objectively superior, but because I like them. They have nice sweeping attacks that also have you constantly advance forwards, good for both crowd control and closing in the distance, and you can also dodge, and on Great Swords it feels the most consistent out of the three weapons that allow for it. They have the third highest range, the stats leave nothing to desire, they deal the second highest damage, third highest impact damage, don't consume as much stamina as Great Axes with the combos, and that's not to speak of the skills. Pommel Counter is broken and among the best skills in the game, and Moment of Truth is borderline broken. Great Swords are the jack of all trades, master of all, they just feel right. Have I mentioned that I'm biased? Also, I fucking refuse to call any of these claymores. Sorry, that thing, it looks cool, but is not a shagging claymore. Okay, now there you have it, an objective ranking of all main weapon classes. Like if you like this and subscribe and all of that, as I am, of course, as implied by the title, also gonna be ranking all offhand weapon types as well as whatever else I can think of pertaining to this game. Have a good one.